Can you ever be too young to be an entrepreneur? I don't think so. As a mentor of budding entrepreneurs in college and in high school, middle school age, elementary school age, I'm starting to realize that you're never too young to dream big. You're never too young to be that innovating solutionist. You're never too young to embark on the entrepreneurial journey. Our guest today is a recent high school graduate, and her first successful business she launched as a second grader. Fast forward to her college path and career, where she was going to major in entrepreneurship. And when she sat down and walked her university through all the entrepreneurial classes that she had done at her high school's Entrepreneur and Innovation Center, they told her not to waste her time because she had learned everything about entrepreneurship in high school that they were going to teach her in college. So she did a pivot. Listen to this amazing, inspiring story where we are getting stuff done so our younger listeners can hear today about Raya Whitlock, one of our youngest entrepreneurs, sharing her story here on the GSD Factor podcast. On today's episode of our special edition Get Stuff Done podcast, I am joined by Raya Whitlock. Hi, Raya. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for joining us today. Raya, you are a graduating high school senior here in Franklin, Tennessee, but you are a budding successful entrepreneur. And so I'm really excited for you to share your story with our listeners today. But first of all, just tell our listeners a little bit about who you are and we'll get your story kicked off.
Yeah, for sure. So I wasn't born here, but I was raised in Franklin, Tennessee. I currently go to Centennial High School. I've been an entrepreneur since I was like really little as in like second grade. A bunch of people in my family are entrepreneurs, been very inspired by them. And then in the past couple of years, I've created this business written by Raya through the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Center. So like I spend time at Centennial High School and I also spend time over here at Franklin in their annex. And that's where I do most of my business work. And so, yeah, that's been really helpful to just getting my foot in the door with the business world. But yeah, so that's kind of just the gist of it. I'm headed to Chicago next year to attend Loyola University Chicago. And I'm actually majoring in visual communications and dance. So
Awesome. So many fun things. And we're going to talk about a little bit about all of them today. Let's first off kick off with our conversation around Written by Raya. So let's talk about how did that idea start, right? Again, you are a senior in Centennial High School, but you're also a senior at Williamson County's Entrepreneur and Innovation Center that is supporting the budding minds of innovators and entrepreneurs throughout our high schools here in our district. And I say our district because this is where my tiny humans go as well. But let's talk a little bit about that. How did Written by Raya get started?
yeah, for sure. So basically in 2020, with all the COVID and all the lovely things, like I feel like a lot of stories start in 2020. I was bullet journaling a lot. So some people don't know what it is, but basically a bullet journal is you take a blank dot grid notebook and then you create an entire day planner system for yourself in there. So I've been doing that over COVID, a little bit before then, but needless to say, it was taking up a lot of my time. And then when quarantine was over, and I actually had to get back to my dance practices in my school and being a full-time student, and then entering high school also because quarantine was like my middle school to high school transition. I lost all of that time. And so I was using bullet journaling, and that was what was like organizing my life. So I was like, gosh, I don't have time for this anymore. And I'm sure a lot of people never had time to begin with, let alone don't have their time back after quarantine. So what I did was I started developing Written by Raya, which is a combination of a traditional planner and that bullet journal system. So the traditional planner part is the fact that you don't have to do any of the work. I did all of the work for you with my Bloom planner and the BU planner. Those are the two ones we have right now. But then also it has the same flexibility and some of the features that people would see online with the bullet journal. So yeah, I've been at that since I did my first official launch June of 2021. and I had the BU planner and the balloon planner there. And so I've been selling them since then.
Amazing. And very successfully, I should add. How many planners have you sold to date?
About 300.
That's awesome. Congratulations. So, as you have been getting this out into the world, what was that biggest lesson that you've taken from that whole process?
Yeah, so part of my business when I started, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have this beautiful online retail store and everyone's going to buy from my online retail store. And not going to lie, they didn't at first. And so what I realized was that I actually, especially in this community, there were a lot of opportunities that I didn't really realize that I needed, where I was going to go in person and people were actually going to be able to flip through all the pages in the Written by Raya book. We have 250 pages in there. So obviously, I'm not going to post all of those on the internet. So people weren't really seeing the true quality of the product online. Whereas I didn't realize that would be the case. I was just like, oh, they'll think it's super interesting and like want to know more and therefore buy one. But really, that conversion wasn't as like dreamy as everyone realizes. Like, not everyone's going to just buy from your online store immediately. Granted, it has increased, but it's only because I've been like in person and people have been able to flip through all 250 pages. So
I think that's such a valuable lesson. It's that in-person connection. It's that in-person connection with the product, but also that in-person connection with you too. And I think that that is what truly sells. And I think that that's a really important lesson as our young entrepreneurs are embarking on their own journeys, is to remember, depending on your product, it could be a product that can sell online and sell through social media, or it's really a product that first customer interaction really needs to take place in person in that tangible good.
mhm. Yes, for sure.
Awesome. So within the GST Factor life, we talk about being confident, inquisitive, imaginative, being present, resilient, and influential. What attribute have you really channeled and leaned into during your entrepreneurial journey the most?
I actually was talking about this with one of my teachers. We had to record the senior like reflection podcast. And I was telling my teacher, I feel like my confidence has really grown in this program. I'm going to be a dance major also and hoping to combine dance and business in the future. But I've also, and I've been on stage, but for some reason, like talking in front of people was like, so scary. I hated it. The first time I remember standing up on that stage and I was like messing with my ring and just like looking around. Like I did not know what I was doing. Like it was so scary. But I think over time, I've learned more about that confidence aspect. And therefore, it's not just like speaking in front of a huge group of people, it's also just going up to someone at like a networking event and all of that. And then also being confident enough to support my brand, even though, like, say someone hated the planner, they didn't think there was enough space or something like that, that I would be like, oh, that's silly. But at the same time, like, I feel like that confidence kind of relays itself into another form of confidence in like my product.
Amazing. And what I love about that and about both of our backgrounds is we both are dancers. So, me many moons ago. And I actually talk about it in my book around that idea of like going on stage and performing, and you're on the stage, you're in front of the lights and you have the music
Mhm.
and you still have those butterflies, like just, in the wings and before you step on stage. And I think for those of us that have been performers in the arts in that way, and I would say it's also the same for athletes before they're running out on the field, before they're jumping in the
Mhm.
water, whatever it may be, is it's that moment and then your adrenaline kicks in and you just go because you have this fantastic muscle memory that says, I've done this, I've practiced this, I've shown up, I've continued to work hard. But I think as you translate that into the business world and through your entrepreneurial world, we own the room that we're in. We own the podcast screen. We own that boardroom. We own that pitch stage, that pitch competition that I've seen you perform on so many times now. And you just treat it like your stage, right? You treat it as, hey, I know this area, I know this product inside and out. I know my pitch
Mhm.
inside and out. And I like to say my daughter is a softball player, and I like to say to her, own the plate. You own the plate.
Mhm.
Like that is your job. That is your task. You own it. And for you, you own the stage as a dancer, but I think you also own that stage in those pitch competitions. And it's like, whether it's a small stage or whether it's a boardroom or whether it's a meeting room or whether, whatever it is, you are owning it. And I think that kind of mindset, and then you activate that confidence is super helpful for people.
Right. Yeah. Like you were saying, the product inside and out, like learning that I knew my product inside and out. Cause yeah, I developed it. Yeah, I drew literally every page. But like at the same time, I did Founders Live and it was like a quicker one. For some reason, the time, they only give you 99 seconds for that pitch competition. That time frame was like really stressing me out for some reason. And I've like done this a million times. And my mom was like, Rhea, the product like the back of your hand, like that old saying. And I was like, why am I nervous at all? So, because you have to know it. And it's just like in a different capacity.
So let's talk about pitch competitions because
Yeah.
that's where I first met you. I got to see you perform in the pitch night for EIC.
Mhm.
And then I actually got to see you again at Founders Live. And I think I've seen you do another one. What is your biggest, what is your biggest lesson or your biggest tips and tricks for entrepreneurs that are needing to do pitches, to get funding, to, get the message out there? What's your top recommendation to them?
Yeah, I used to be really stressed about it. But as far as like my big final pitch night, because that one was the one where I was like, for sure, there's monetary value for my business attached. So that was like, the high pressure situation. I would say, like, what I did to prepare was I had a note on my phone, and then I had my ideal written by Raya spiel. I think is literally what I called the note, the whole spiel. And so I had the ideal one written out. I had to look at it again and be like, what is realistic for me to remember? If there was like a big stat in there, I was like, am I really going to remember that stat? As much as I wanted to open with it, I have to be realistic here and know what I know. And so what I would do is I would do my pitch without using the sheet and then compare and then see little changes. Because if you're going to try to like revolutionize your entire spiel, then that's just not going to work. And I knew that in the time frame that I was at, that's not really going to work. So I went back and like compared like the ideal to what I was actually doing and kind of just meeting in the middle.
That's such great advice because I think whenever entrepreneurs and we're out there and we are pitching, there's different amounts of time, right? So there's
Mhm.
those 3-minute pitches, those 99-second pitches, there's those 30-second pitches in an elevator, right? And I think that there's a lot of opportunities to say, what is the most important thing for you to say that makes you memorable, that says to
Mhm.
someone, oh, I want to come back and talk to you later, or I have a question, or I want to go out and online and look at them. And I think that is what is so important about your brand and your uniqueness and, leaving that impressionable impression so that they go, oh, I remember this conversation. I remember this pitch. I want to go back. So I think that that's a really important lesson.
Mhm.
Now, you talk about your budding entrepreneurial career started in second grade. And so tell our listeners a little bit about what were some of those early entrepreneurial things that you did and how did you, because let's face it, that is really where you ignited your entrepreneurial spirit, you ignited your confidence. So talk to us a little bit about that because we have a lot of parents that listen to this phone call to our podcast show, and I want them to be confident to allow their kids, if their kids are entrepreneurial leaning, to really lean into that. And I think that, in this day and age, I think it's, when I was growing up, it was the day at the lemonade stand and all these different things. I don't know that that is as common anymore. So I'd love for our listeners to hear from you about what did it look like as a second grade entrepreneur?
Yeah. So do you remember those rainbow loom bracelets that were like the little rubber bands? Okay.
Yes.
So that's important to this story a little bit. So basically I already had that like rainbow loom and I was making all the bracelets and stuff, but there were these little charms that you could put on the rainbow looms. And to put it simply, it's literally just one of the bands that you put in the bracelet and then like a bead. So what I did was I went to the Learning Express toys like all the time to take the lessons on like the bracelet making and, talk to the owners all the time. Like the owners knew us because we were there so often. I was there all the time, second grade. Like what else? What better?
We
than
love
that?
Learning Express too. So shout out to
Yes, I
shout
love
out to
Learning
the owners.
Express. It was amazing. I was there all the time. But they had like the little charms, like the rubber band and the bead to go on the bracelets on like their little front counter display. And then we were asking them, like my mom and I, we were like, how much do you guys pay for each one of these little, literally like bead rubber band? And then they were, I don't remember how much they said, but then I was like, oh, because my second grade ambitious self was like, I can do it cheaper. And so I charged 25 cents per charm. And then what we would do is my mom and I would go to Hobby Lobby and we would pick out a bunch of beads and stuff that we liked. Like there were dolphins, there were letters, like all sorts of stuff. And then I would take like the bands I already had at home and I would just tie and, do it over and over again. And I sold them at 25 cents a piece to Learning Express for like a whole summer. And so I like kept like every time I would have like a new, I'm like, I got a dolphin now. I have these letters now and like all these things. So I would go and sell them. And then because I was in second grade, my like dream trip was to go to Legoland with my family. And so I made $2,000, which was enough to take my family of four to Legoland for 2 days. So we
That's
put all of
amazing.
that money. Yeah, we put all of that money towards that trip. And like our parents were planning to like go to Disney after. And so we like tacked on the 2 days of Legoland with all my money that I had made.
That's awesome. I love that story. And I love how your mom was involved. Certainly. I love how our local business of Learning Express was also involved. And it's a lot about that ecosystem that Dr. Qualls talks about, right? It's how do we support this ecosystem? We come around and support not only just the entrepreneurs within the familial unit, but also the school unit and the community unit. And I think that that's what is so important for people to hear is that we can't do it alone. We have to have that community around us. We have to have that support, whether it's businesses, whether it's partners, whether it's family, whether it's our teachers, whatever that looks like. And I think that that's so important. So now let's talk about post-high school plans. And I know that you are headed to Chicago and you're headed to Loyola. And the original plan was to major in entrepreneurship, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes, for sure.
So what pivot did Raya experience?
Yeah, so I went a couple weekends ago. It was in March, but I went to like the admitted students weekend. And so I was going around, I was talking to all the business majors. Like I was just talking to all the different professors, heads of departments, whatever. And I went to the entrepreneurial guy and I was like, can you start or can you use a business that you already have for like your program? And I don't think he really understood what I meant. So I came back later and he was like, we're starting new ideas. And so I like came back and I was like, okay, so for a little bit more context, I'm in this 3-year program in my school district. And we basically like go through the whole process of ideation and all this stuff. And he was like, okay, well, do you want me to tell you about our course? He described basically verbatim the 3 years that I've done at EIC. Because I had heard that from other colleges before. And that's why I had started like looking at their program because I was like, okay, maybe it's like a little different, like, because they all sounded very similar to EIC. But he basically described verbatim everything I've already done. And I was like, okay. His literal words were like, don't like waste your time. I didn't know what to do. Like I'd always thought like I was going to major in entrepreneurship, that's going to be my thing. And, because like it's what I'm obviously really passionate about. But when I went and he was just like, don't waste your time, I was like, what do I do? So I talked to pretty much every other business related major and like head of department that I was interested in. And I was like, I leaned over to my mom. I was like, I don't know what to do. Like I just, because that was always like the one-stop shop. I was always going to do that. And so I went on my computer when we were driving back and I was like, oh, there's this visual communications thing. And so it was like more of the like fine art side of it. So there's like more drawing classes and like photography and all sorts of stuff that can like feed into advertising. And it's like advertising, but it's less of like the marketing like breakdown. At least like what I got from it. I talked to a couple students at the School of Communication. And so yeah, that's kind of the new plan is doing visual communication.
So, two things that I want to take away from this is how incredible that the 3-year program that you did at Williamson County's EIC program is, at the very least, exactly what you would have gotten as a entrepreneurial major in college, but you got to experience it and you got to apply it in high school. So, first of all, a shout out to the EIC team on that
Yeah, for
front.
sure.
But I
They
also
deserve a
want
lot
to
of shout outs.
a lot of shout outs. I also want to commend you because that was a major pivot for you. And pivots are part of life. And sometimes they're small pivots and sometimes they're very large pivots. I would say that this is probably a large pivot because your plan was Loyola and Chicago for entrepreneurship. What I'm also grateful for you is that you were able to have that conversation ahead of time, ahead of school getting started. So you weren't having to do a pivot mid-year. But, that pivot has now, that's a really major life pivot. And then to be able to, pause and reflect and, start to research and then, pivot and now relaunch. And now you've got this new major starting in the fall. And what I love about your major is that it's really going to continue to enhance and amplify your entrepreneurial business already. And I think that that's a really smart move because I think those are things that you can then turn around and apply to your business. And I really commend you for that. But that's a really big life pivot and you handled it with extreme confidence. You handled it with poise and we're excited to continue to hear from you about your journey. And, I think what's important for people to hear is, can you go off and get a major in entrepreneurship? Absolutely. Can you find your local entrepreneurial and innovation center in your area and start in middle school and high school? Absolutely. Right. And so I think that, for me, what this conversation has stirred up and reminded me is that if you or your children are entrepreneurs at heart and have an idea, just take action, keep doing it, keep trying it and build it now. Don't wait until high school. Don't wait until college. Go ahead and start building now. So what is that one piece of advice that you would give to your younger self about entrepreneurship?
Ooh, I would just say obviously as a second grader, I went for it. There were some times where I was in between those middle school years where I would sell little stationery cards and do stuff with my calligraphy. I really just wish I had maybe gone more head first into it because I definitely could have. And knowing where I've been able to get now, even just starting again your confidence thing, being enough being confident enough in myself and what I was going to do, just dive head first instead of being a little hesitant. Because who knows, maybe I could have had 3 businesses by now. You never know.
Well, I think you are a remarkable young woman. I'm so excited to continue to follow your journey. Congratulations on all the things that we've talked about today. You should be extremely proud of yourself. You should certainly take a moment to celebrate.
Thank you.
Because I think that's the one thing that us entrepreneurs, we're always looking to the next thing. We're dreaming big. We're thinking outside the box.
Mm-hmm.
We're problem solving, all the different things. But sometimes we forget to pause and go, you did it. Congratulations. And I think that that's something that, entrepreneurs forget to do. So be sure to celebrate yourself here. And, something I'm asking all the guests this year is what are you powerfully choosing for yourself in 2024?
Ooh, that's a hard one. I'm kind of going in a new direction with Written by Raya. Hopefully by the time this is out, we'll be pivoting in that new direction. So I'm just gonna try to be confident and just go exactly like we were talking about, just going with that new plan and knowing I want this because it's something that I've been looking at doing with Written by Raya for a while. So just being confident and going towards that because I I know it can happen. And so just like staying on that like dreaming big thing. I mean, that's actually my quote on my like Notion tab, like where I organize all my stuff, is celebrate every win, no matter how small. So definitely celebrating right now, but also like I'm really excited and I just want to like dive, kind of like I was saying, dive headfirst into like the new part of Written by Raya, like Written by Raya 2.0, however you want to say it, but all the things. So I'm just gonna dive headfirst into that, not let going to college stop me. So yeah, it'll be great.
That's awesome. Well, Raya, thank you so much for being on the podcast today
Of
and
course.
sharing your story and sharing your, those lessons with our young entrepreneurs and parents of entrepreneurs as well. We wish you every success, and please, we're going to stay in touch with you and keep following your amazing journey. And, certainly a shout out to our local ecosystem here, our Williamson County Entrepreneur and Innovation Center, as well as our Learning Express toy and learning center store. And, to all of you, thank you, GSD Factor podcast listeners, today for listening in to our Get Stuff Done. And we appreciate you. And we hope that this has been an inspirational and encouraging podcast for your young listeners today. And don't forget to get stuff done.
Thanks for listening to the GSD Factor podcast. If you liked this episode, please rate and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, where you can also find previous episodes. Let's also connect on LinkedIn and Instagram. If you're looking for more information on the GSD Factor, visit us at gsdfactor.com. And always remember to GSD.